Hi, everybody. Today is Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025, and our great friend, Donald Wilkerson, is here with us. Welcome back, Larry.
I'm glad to be with you, my dear friend. Judge is never going to live that down.
Larry, let me start. Please subscribe and hit like button, helping us because the algorithm works this way, and you may do that, and that would help us tremendously. And Larry, let me start with the case of Venezuela and what has happened with the case of the boat. You know, they bombed the boat. Two survivors came out of what has happened. Then they hit the second thought, the second bomb. They just assassinated the two survivors of the first attack. And here is what White House is talking about and the response, because they were asking, that there are a lot of repercussions going on in the mainstream media and, in the alternative media about what is happening for the case of Venezuela and the attacks. Here is what White House said.
Administration either confirm or deny or reveal whether or not there were survivors after that initial first strike, and what imminent threat would two survivors pose who were clinging presumably to the wreckage of that boat?
Again, as I said, I think you guys are sort of not listening fully to the statement I've provided. Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law, directing the engagement to ensure the boat was totally destroyed and the threat to the narco-terrorists, to the United States, was eliminated. And for any further questions about his thinking, I would defer you to the Department of War. I obviously wasn't in the room for the...
Yeah.
I'm glad she's taken the cross off of her neck, because in that particular instance, but many others previously, the cross would have turned into a flaming cross and burned her neck. That she's a Christian is laughable. She lies remarkably poorly. Christians lie better than that.
Yeah. And
she dropped the blame down on the admiral. She took it right off Hegseth and Trump, of course, by extension, and put it down on the admiral. Let me explain something. You probably know this, but maybe your listeners don't. World War II, a German Me-109 buzzes in on an American B-17. B-17 dropping bombs on German industry. The Me-109 German fighter pilot tasked with taking the B-17 down. He shoots the B-17 down. He shoots another B-17 down. Then a gunner on one of the B-17s or P-51 or another aircraft in escort brings him down. He manages to get out of his cockpit and under silk. He's parachuting down. In comes one of our fighter planes and machine guns him underneath that parachute. That is a war crime. Another instance, German prisoners are surrendering around the Battle of the Bulge, the German counteroffensive in the Ardennes, 44 and 45. American troops, rather than taking them into custody and sending them back to POW camps, shoot them. That was a war crime. It was called the Malmedy Massacre. What happened to those two people, as I understand it, in that boat or outside that boat after the initial strike was a war crime. And Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth and that woman right there for her lies are guilty of aiding and abetting or ordering war crimes, period. There is no more discussion to it. Not in international law and not in domestic law. And it's augmented in domestic law by the fact that no war has been declared by the Congress against these national security threats, narco-terrorists, to the United States. Not to even mention the fact that every vested intelligence community that I know of, US and European, you name it, claims that Nicolas Maduro is a narco-terrorist. Now, as the New York Times said, finally, I almost dropped the paper. They called it dissonance. Letting Hernandez out of jail, a confirmed and convicted narcotics trafficker, and going after Maduro, a person who is not a narco trafficker, that's dissonance. That's political dissonance. That's, oh, you think? All we're after is the oil, Nima. All we're after is the oil. And, Israel is after some other things, partly the oil too. Israel is going to be in desperate straits looking for gas and oil because the world is rapidly deciding that it isn't going to function with them anymore in that regard. And they get it at discounted prices because they cheat. They cheat all the time. They don't want to deal with anybody who won't give them discounted prices on their energy needs. And that's what they do all the time. So, anyway, got me started. War crimes. War crimes. The President of the United States of America is a war criminal. He is not a recipient of the Nobel Prize unless they bastardize themselves so grossly to do that. He is a war criminal. Where he belongs is not receiving the Nobel Prize for peace or anything else. Where he belongs is in The Hague before the International Criminal Court, and he needs to be convicted and sent to jail. Won't happen, of course, but that's the world.
Larry, Donald Trump said that Pete Hegseth didn't know about the second
bullshit.
Bombing.
Yeah. They're already dumping it on the admiral. And that's by Hegseth's instruction. I'll guarantee you, they're dumping it on the admiral. Now, I'm not relieving him of responsibility because he should have said not only no, but hell no. I'm not doing that. My understanding of the event is that it wasn't from the air. It was from an island. And it was a controlled drone, if you will. Drones can be on their own or they can be controlled by someone using the communications capability, lasers, whatever. And that what they did was see clearly that the people were in the water or whatever outside the boat and had survived the initial strike, and then they hit them again. That was probably a decision made by, I would guess at the highest level, it was made by the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. It was at a minimum made by the Admiral, or it could have been, we've gotten so bad lately, Nima, with Special Operating Forces, it could have been delegated to the team leader and he made the decision.
Yeah.
But anyway, look at it, it's a war crime.
Here is what Pete Hegseth said, Larry.
Oh, good. I get to listen to that.
I'll say again, we've only just begun striking narco boats and putting narco terrorists at the bottom of the ocean because they've been poisoning the American people. And Joe Biden tried to approach it with kid gloves and allowed them to come across the border. Cartels take over community, 20 million people, hundreds of thousands of Americans poisoned. And President Trump said, no, we're taking the gloves off. We're taking the fight to these designated terror organizations, and that's exactly what we're doing. So we're stopping the drugs, we're striking the boats, we're defeating narco terrorists, and we're standing...
And Peter, you may say one thing, that drugs coming in through the sea by sea are down 91%.
That's hogwash. That's a lie. That's a lie so big that it would not be containable in a GP large tent. Down by 91%. We struck for month after month after month in the Caribbean, on the other side in the Pacific, and even occasionally in Mexico. Month after month after month after month for a year. And the most reduction we got was 11%. They are lying through their teeth, which they have made a profession in this administration, especially the president, lying through his teeth. And let's just examine this further. Nothing is going to stop the flow of drugs into the United States of America except going for the center of gravity of that situation, what the Germans call the center of gravity. You know what the center of gravity is? The people sucking down the drugs Let me say that again. The people sucking down the drugs, the CEOs, the COOs, the computer engineers, all the people that are sucking down the drug, including the poor people that do it because they have no other alternative. They have to have it to even live. That's the center of gravity of the drug war. That's who you go after to make a sizable dent into narco-terrorism. It's not the people growing the poppies. It's not the people in the chem labs making the synthetics, fentanyl. It's not any of that. It's not the people transporting them. It's the people taking the drugs. Nima, do you think that they would be transporting those drugs if they weren't received at the other end and used? That's the stupidity of all of this. That was the stupidity of Ronald Reagan, the stupidity of George H.W. Bush, the stupidity of George W. Bush, every single president, war on drugs. Idiocy, idiocy. And yet we did it. We did it because it was politically palatable. The American people don't want to be told, Europeans don't want to be told that they are the reason. They don't want to be told that their habit is the reason. It's not narco-terrorism. Bullshit. It's the people taking the drugs. Listen, Americans, you are the problem. You bastards taking the drugs are the problem. But we're not coming after you. We're going after the poor campesinos and others that maybe scratch out a living over it. And the heinous people who run the whole thing and make billions. I agree with that. But it's not narco-terrorism. Dull, baby. Petey, baby. And the military going along with it and doing what they're doing is simply unconscionable. I have to conclude right now, this moment. I really do fear that we might have a coup d'etat because the military would go along with it.